Bonjour. Today I'm doing something different. I'm analyzing a One Piece episode with Garp's Galaxy Impact. This scene made a huge impact on the fandom. There are so many clips and reaction videos with so many millions of views. Even the manga readers were shocked. Most people chalk it up to the animation and the power scaling. I say there's a lot more to it. I want to talk about all the narrative reasons that this hit so hard. In short, Oda did what he always does. He built up our emotional investment and cashed in on it with a fight. There were so many events that built up to this, and so many other events that contrast with this. So much that this scene cashes in on the entire series. I promise I am not exaggerating. First, let's talk about Garp's purpose. Why would you say Garp did the Galaxy Impact? At the surface level, it's to rescue Kobe. But if that's the purpose, it was completely unnecessary. Kobe was already rescued and successfully getting away with Hibari. Bruce reported that over the snail phone. Pause and let that sink in. Garp knew that Kobe had already escaped. That's mission success, time to go home. There's nothing left to do on this island. So why did he really do it? Well, let's look at who was hit by the Galaxy Impact. The attack hit a bunch of wimpy fodder pirates. They can't do much damage because Kobe can use the Rokushiki and Haki. They're not worth taking down. Even if Garp wanted to get them out of the way, he has easier attack options. He could throw cannonballs, he could dash in and punch people, he could do a Conqueror's Blast, or he could just order the rest of the Marine crew to fight. Any one of these options are more than enough to do the job. To put this in perspective, Garp using Galaxy Impact against fodder pirates is like if Kaido used Ragnarok against fodder marines. Now, I'm not a power scaler, I'm not saying they're the exact same. My point is, this is one of the strongest people in the world using a heavy-duty, advanced Haki attack, maybe advanced Conquerors. Using this attack against this opponent is overkill beyond all reason. So, this is more than an attack. Garp is making a statement. Garp is showing off his power and his type of justice. There's a lot of history and context which explains the full meaning of that. This moment is part of what struck me and made me think about the scene so much. In over 1,000 episodes of One Piece, how many times have you seen pirates screaming in terror of a marine? How many times have you seen marines using this level of power? Maybe a couple of times from the admirals, but that's it. A handful out of 1,000 episodes is nothing compared to pirates being dominant the rest of the time. That says a lot about the world that Oda is showing us. He is showing us 90% of marines being weak. Regular marines don't even have Haki or devil fruits. Regular marines have not been a problem for the Straw Hats since before NES Lobby. They are fodder. They are placeholders without names or character quirks that we expect. In a series where everyone important is so bursting with personality and ambition, the regular marines are all background characters with standardized uniforms, with standardized weapons, on standardized ships, supporting an oppressive government. They're practically stormtroopers. The few who are better are vice admirals and above, but they are always busy doing nothing. Fighting smaller pirates, defending marine bases, training new recruits, paperwork, whatever it is they're busy with, it is not taking down the biggest and baddest pirates. Even the strong marines don't have training montages. They don't have Haki lightning. They definitely don't have Conqueror's Haki. They don't have advanced forms of Haki. They don't have intense clashes that we get hyped for. There's also a difference in the types of devil fruits that the marines have. No one besides the admirals has a devil fruit that holds up in the New World. They have the rust fruit, the berry fruit, and the cage fruit. That was an annoyance back in Paradise. Meanwhile, Doflamingo can make the birdcage, heal his internal organs, and make clones of himself. Big Mom can steal your soul and use it to animate other objects. Sugar can make a dystopia where people are erased from memory. Law can teleport things and people, switch bodies, cut out people's beating hearts, and make someone immortal. This is a completely different level. The best of the best devil fruits also scale with the user's power. They work together with Haki, and they have good awakenings. The Marines don't have any of that. Oda is setting up the Marines as being stagnant and falling behind. They are not seeking out all these crazy powers and changing the world. The worst generation is out there training, challenging people, and moving up the ranks in real battles, while the Navy just sits around keeping the balance of power. We also never see Marines bragging about the biggest bounties they have taken down, or counting medals from their uniforms, or notches on their weapons from achievements, or thank you letters and gifts from civilians they protected. I'm sure this happens some, but it's very intentional that Oda doesn't focus on this. The choice to leave out this stuff is part of the world building and the image he wants us to have. And because the Marines are ineffective, there are so many villains who get away with things for so many years. Captain Morgan got away with it because he was a Marine. Arlong got away with it because he bribed Nezumi. Crocodile, Moria, and Doflamingo got away with it because they were warlords. Big Mom, Kaido, and Blackbeard got away with it because they were Yonko. There's this whole cycle of abuse that happens, where a strong villain takes over a kingdom, sets up some thinly veiled abuse of its people, and the government turns a blind eye. We've seen it time and time again. Most people don't have the strength to fight these villains. The few Marines who do are ordered not to touch them, to keep the balance of power. The villains are left alone to harm people for years. It's always the Straw Hats who have to do the work. The Straw Hats always have to fight first and expose the villains' crimes in order for the Marines to take action. At this point in the story, when we're seeing more of the Gorosei and Imu, it's fair to think this is intentional. The Marines and the government always hold close their precious devil fruits, technology, and strong fighters. They keep resources in reserve for only the most important times, like the Paramount War. They never sent buster calls against the warlords or the Yonko. They never sent the admirals, Garp, Cypherpole, the Holy Knights, the Gorosei themselves, pacifistas, or the weapon that destroyed Lulusia. None of it. That was used against O'Hara, against Robin in NES Lobby, against Luffy stopping slave trading in Sabaody, covering up Luffy's victories over Crocodile, Moria, and Doflamingo, against Wano, against Lulusia's revolution, against Egghead. The cases where they do and don't choose to use their forces are very telling. The Gorosei are allowing the world to be a mess, because it keeps everyone busy and distracted from the larger problem, which is them. Everyone is busy fighting pirates and surviving, including the good Marines like Kobe, Smoker, Tashigi, and Fujitora. So no one can even think about supporting the Revolutionary Army. This plan has had mixed results. Part of the reason Dragon was able to start the Revolutionary Army was because the previous generation cleaned up so much. Roger and Whitebeard, Garp and Sengoku defeated the worst of the worst, such as Rox, Shiki, Chinjao, and many more off-screen. They, unknowingly, made some breathing room for Dragon to work with. Then, as the Great Pirate era was ramping up, the distraction started to work the other way around. There were more and more pirates, but Dragon had already gotten started. Now the Marines and pirates are busy fighting each other, so Dragon mostly has to fight the government, not Marines or pirates. That's what Dragon wants anyway. He wants to have a very narrow focus on the celestial dragons. Anyway, with the Gorosei's manipulation in mind, the start of the Egghead arc paints a very grim picture. We spent so long in the Wano arc for everyone to learn their next power-ups, and advanced Haki, and Devil Fruit awakenings. The worst generation was trying to take over after Wano, but there's a whole wave of pushback. Leluzia was destroyed by the government's weapon. Kid was destroyed by Shanks, again. Law was in the process of losing to Blackbeard. York betrayed Vegapunk. And the government is making Egghead the second O'Hara. They're sending CP0 and a huge army, and Kizaru, and Saturn. The powers that be are not moved, and Blackbeard is one of the powers that be. We are given reminders of everything from past arcs that builds up Blackbeard's power. His base island was Rox's base. He has 2 crazy strong devil fruits. He captured Moria. Pizarro's devil fruit is like Pika's. He has Shiryu from Impel Down, who uses Absalom's stolen devil fruit. He has Wolf, who is even bigger than Ors and the Numbers. There's a connection with the mysterious Rocky Port incident. He has Aokiji. He has slaves of different races from all over the world. Everyone on the island is hunting for bounties, like when Doflamingo put bounties out. To summarize so far, the Marines are weak and make deals with pirates. Garp is going to contrast with that, which is part of the impact of his scene. But let me wait until the end to drive that home. I want to emphasize Blackbeard's past. Blackbeard managed to piss off every major faction in the One Piece world. The Marines hate him just because he's a pirate, because he helped destroy Marineford, because he broke people out of Impel Down, and because he corrupted Aokiji. For other pirates, Luffy, Shanks, Marco, and Weevil all hate Blackbeard for contributing to Ace and Whitebeard's deaths. Shanks has more history with the scar that Blackbeard gave him. Blackbeard even picked a fight with the Revolutionary Army. He drove them out of Baltigo after Sabo took the Maramara no Mi. The Blackbeard pirates had this coming. They were overdue to get wrecked when they messed with the wrong person. Now that Blackbeard is a Yonko, part of the reason the Marines leave him alone is they expect the Yonko to fight each other as rivals. The Marines expect them to do damage to each other's crews and fleets, or at least threaten to, and hold each other in check. That's the whole idea of the balance of power, that the major factions all hold each other back from gaining an advantage. But it seems like that does not happen with Blackbeard, not as much. Because he rose to power so quickly, because people are freaked out by his 2 devil fruits, because he got Aokiji, and especially because he steals devil fruits. Even when he does get in a fight, he steals the enemy's devil fruits and makes his own crew stronger. Blackbeard has been too comfortable. And now Blackbeard wants a kingdom, and he's gonna make a deal with the government. Although the government is strong, they need to replace the former warlords who became enemies, and the tons of pacifistas and seraphim which are at risk in the battle at Egghead. The government isn't stupid. They'll be careful because Blackbeard already betrayed them, but they would make a deal similar to the warlords and held at arm's length. Blackbeard becomes a symbol of the warlord system returning in another form. All of Luffy and Fujitora's effort to change things goes out the window. It feels so depressing and hopeless to go back to this again. We know exactly what will happen because we've seen it time and time again. Blackbeard will get the deal, he will keep trading slaves, stealing devil fruits, murder and pillaging, abusing people in every way, and no one with enough power can be bothered to stop him for decades. All the history and current events up to now build up the Blackbeard Pirates' side of the story, their power and their narrative. Now it switches perspective, and the Marines have their say. Garp has history too. Garp has a grudge against Blackbeard for Ace's death. Blackbeard was the one who captured Ace and handed him to the Marines. As much as Garp allowed it to happen because Ace chose to be a pirate, Garp still cares about Ace. Garp took Ace from Rouge, took him to be raised in secret, and visited him for 17 years. Garp was conflicted and cried at Marineford. After the war, Garp let Dadan beat him in the street because he allowed Ace to die. Now we see how much Garp was holding back. His whole character arc in the war was self-control. It was all he could do to stop himself from nuking the place and destroying Akainu. He didn't because his principles stop him from fighting his fellow Marines. Later, after the war, Garp had time to process the grief, and he remembered there was another person responsible for the situation, Blackbeard. And Blackbeard does not have that protection of being a fellow Marine. Garp absolutely can destroy Blackbeard and his crew. With that said, Garp couldn't join the Payback War because that would beg the question of what is so important to him to join forces with pirates. That would reveal his connection to Ace, which would stain the reputation of the Marines. Garp believes it was right to give Ace a chance at life, but he knows other people disagree and it has to be kept a secret. So now, after 2 years, Garp finally has a chance to take out his conflicted anger on someone responsible for Ace's death. Garp also wants to settle the matter with Aokiji. Of course, Garp is sad and frustrated to see Aokiji like this, and he feels responsible because he trained someone who has now turned to evil. There are theories that Aokiji is in Sword or something, but he is at least playing the part of a pirate and selling it. Garp wants to end Aokiji before he hurts anyone else and further stains the reputation of the Marines. And of course, Garp cares about Kobe, his new favorite student. There's an element of Garp is doing for Kobe what he couldn't do for Ace. Kobe chose to be a Marine, unlike Ace and Luffy. This time, the friend in trouble is a Marine, and the enemies are pirates. So Garp is fully free to fight. He can let loose as much as he wants. All of this personal beef is another part of the impact of Garp's scene. There is still more to Garp's principles. Sengoku said that Garp refuses to become an admiral because he doesn't want to serve the Celestial Dragons. Sengoku specifically said it's because of Garp's moral compass. This shows more nuance and dedication in Garp's character. He cares about justice. He recognizes that there is conflict between true justice and the Celestial Dragons. But Garp does not join the Revolutionary Army. He chooses to stay with the Marines to carry out justice against pirates as normal, but also to lead by example, and to train new Marines to follow in his footsteps. Garp very intentionally chose students from the next generations who agree with his type of justice, Kobe and previously Aokiji. And of course, Garp respected Roger enough to ally against Roxx, to visit him in jail, and to take care of Ace. All of this paints a picture of Garp strategically trying to change the system from the inside. And when Garp chooses to make this big scene, he is rejecting the balance of power, where pirates make a deal and they're allowed to harm people. Part of the reason the Blackbeard pirates would have gotten the deal is they're so strong that it's inevitable. There's this feeling that we have to overlook the Blackbeard pirates as evil. But eventually, someone even stronger comes along. Garp picks a fight. He rescues Kobe and the slaves. He beats down Wolf, Shiryu, Aokiji, and Pizarro. Then, Garp wears down and gets captured himself. Garp's interference does two things. First, it's too big to ignore. He nuked a Yonko's base, and then Kobe did too. One hero of the Marines gets captured, and another comes into his own. Even the Gorosei can't cover that up. He fought the Blackbeard pirates enough that they won't want a cover-up. They're definitely enemies now. Second, this flips the whole perspective of the situation. Now that we've seen an even stronger person, the Blackbeard pirates are not inevitable. Garp reminded everyone that the Marines can and should fight pirates like this. We don't have to overlook their evil. We shouldn't overlook their evil. Murder and pillaging, stealing devil fruits, slave trading, and capturing the good Marines. The narrative is irreversibly changed, from Blackbeard is an inevitable force negotiating a deal, to Blackbeard is an evil pirate facing justice. This flipping of the perspective also happened in the O'Hara flashback. When we first heard about O'Hara, we thought that the Buster Call's power was absolute, that no one survived who knew any better than the government's lies. Now we know neither of those things is true. Saul lives. Making Robin cry with happiness over Saul is a small reversal of one of the biggest tragedies. Vegapunk, Dragon, and the Giants were there and saw through the lies instantly. And now we've seen Fifth Gear, Prime Roger and Whitebeard, and all kinds of other crazy powers that people can attain. We start to believe that the government itself is not inevitable. We're getting closer to having a final war against Mires. This is more subtle and slow burning, but it casts things in a new light. More and more, the coming war against Mires is in the back of our minds as we think about current events. Stopping Blackbeard from becoming the government's ally is striking a blow against them today. It's almost like Garp has already changed sides. The setting also plays a role. Starting in Law and Kids fights, and now at Hachinosu, the setting is a wide open space in broad daylight with a clear sky. It emphasizes how the world has changed after Wano. There is no outside interference in these fights. This is also paralleled to Oden's flashbacks. Oden wanted to fight Whitebeard, so Oden fought Whitebeard. That's all there was to it. Whitebeard wanted to fight Roger, so Whitebeard fought Roger. Now, in the present, Blackbeard wants to fight Law, so Blackbeard fights Law. Kid wants to fight Shanks, so Kid fights Shanks. Garp wants to fight the Blackbeard Pirates, so Garp fights the Blackbeard Pirates. In all of these fights, there's no one else getting in the way, and no one else backing them up. There's no more cipher pole threatening anyone if they do this. There's no more looming threat of a Buster Call. There's not another Yonko or an Admiral breathing down anyone's neck. In a way, we finally reached what One Piece is supposed to be. There's no more sitting around keeping the balance of power. Now we finally have pirates competing with pirates for the One Piece at the highest level. Whoever wins or loses, it's still a whole different fight, and it's refreshing. This is part of the freedom that everyone wants. Especially since the Reverie, it feels like the whole world has improved. There are so many good, strong people all around the world. They have a lot of connections and friendships with each other. This is another parallel to Oden's flashbacks. Because of this stable, better environment, everyone was able to see through the lies of the warlord system and work together to shut it down. Now, Garp seeing through the deal with Blackbeard to recognize his evil is an extension of that. Everything throughout the series built up to where we are now to improve things bit by bit. This is all the more meaningful because Luffy made it possible. At the start of the story, it felt like each island was on its own, barely surviving a desperate battle against everything: weather, pirates, warlords, corrupt marines, heavenly tributes, and visits from celestial dragons. Then Luffy took down a bunch of nasty people: Arlong, Crocodile, Moria, Hordy, Caesar, Doflamingo, and Kaido. Luffy cleaned up like the previous generation did, and helped build some of those connections between everyone. At the same time that good characters are built up, so many things are not going the government's way. Whitebeard's last words drove pirates crazy again. Morgan's is reporting the truth of the warlords, Fifth Gear, and everyone's D names. All the former warlords became potential enemies. Cross-Guild formed, and they're setting bounties on marines. As everyone gets closer to the One Piece, the poneglyphs come into the spotlight. That risks exposing everything else they contain: the secret history, the Will of D, and the ancient weapons. The Revolutionary Army is starting to fight Mires directly. The government's resources are stretched thin. This is an opportunity for Garp to do something, and the government can't immediately undo it. If Garp had acted before now, it would have been a different story. Imagine, at some point in the last 20 years, if Garp decided he couldn't stand the slavery and abuse of the government anymore, if he acted on his own, or if he joined Dragon. He would have to fight all of the government's powers. Buster Calls, Admirals, Sengoku, all of the warlords, the Holy Knights, the Gorosei themselves. Everything would be lined up against him. He would lose, and he would die. Everything would go back to the way it was, but with no hope or ability to fight back in the future. Luffy changed the situation. He whittled away at the warlords, then the Yonko, and now he's becoming more of a threat to the government itself. There is so much chaos and momentum in current events. Garp had to bide his time for a chance like this. This is the cost of the path he chose. Because he can't take on the whole government all at once, he has to watch some awful things happen. This is the blood-soaked calculus of waiting to strike at the right time and place to make a larger change. He could have acted immediately. He could have saved a handful of people, like Fisher Tiger did, and then died. But he wants to make a bigger difference than that. This is Garp's opportunity to strike a meaningful blow. He may still die doing it, but he can stop Blackbeard's deal and keep the government on the defensive. That is worth spending his last hurrah. The people who call Garp a bootlicker because he didn't act sooner have unrealistic expectations. Any strategy for resisting the government is going to be imperfect, messy, and bloody. If Garp were really on the government's side, he would have killed Dragon 20 years ago when he defected. Garp would have allowed Ace and Luffy to die at birth. He would have killed Luffy at Water 7. He would have fought seriously at Marineford. He didn't do any of that. He refuses to be an admiral because he explicitly is not a bootlicker. The reality is, Garp is following an imperfect path of resisting the government. I think the story is better with the nuance and the conflict of a character who takes this approach. From the moment Garp's crew shows up, everything changes. The first thing we see is Groose using a devil fruit that acts like a Logia. That alone carries a huge weight. Kujaku uses a devil fruit to move the buildings and intimidates the pirates. Hibari uses Vegapunk's technology to stop pirates from shooting and flirts with Kobe. Kobe and Helmeppo were already established as users of the Rokushiki. The others might have those powers, and Haki as well. Garp uses the equivalent of a coup de burst. They all get a title card introduction. They are connected to other characters and events. They have personality. They have their own style. They are strong. They are putting the precious resources to use. They smile with confidence in Garp, exactly like the Straw Hats do for Luffy. Oda contrasted them with the standard Stormtrooper Marines in every way. He even has Marines in other places living out the issues right now to drive the point home. The strong Marines are on their way to destroy Egghead, and some weak Marines are abusing civilians on Sphinx Island while Marco is away. All of that versus the good Marines fighting the Blackbeard pirates and protecting civilians here on Hachinosu. The difference could not be clearer. Garp has had power all along, but he is picking his battles to change the system from the inside. There were hints that Garp has been a little bit active, but he couldn't resist the government in the spotlight. He couldn't do too much, or the Gorosei would stop him. He couldn't protect O'Hara. He couldn't help Fisher Tiger free the slaves. He couldn't change the whole balance of power from where it was at the start of the story. But fighting a pirate crew who have all kinds of personal beef with him, that he can get away with. Finally, Garp starts winding up, and the hype builds. We're in suspense, wondering, does he still got it? All the different story threads are carefully placed and tied together, all depending on Garp. We've had 1,000 episodes and decades of time, both in story and in real life, building up those expectations of the Marines being weak, corrupt, making deals, being awful. Now Garp steps up to say, no, these guys are clearly evil. I'm not playing dumb and turning a blind eye. I have power today, And I am here today. Marines are supposed to fight pirates. Let me show you how it's done. Garp blasts his Conqueror's Haki. He makes pirates scream in terror. Garp fires his attack. It explodes. It shoots Haki lightning. It blows away pirates. It melts stone buildings. It destroys everything. And it's a Marine, of all people, doing this. A Marine using this level of power for true justice. The hype for Garp is multiplied by cashing in on everything all at once. This punch carries the weight of 22 years of Garp's love and revenge for Ace. It shatters the 1,000 episodes of expectations of Marines being awful. Garp attacks the pirates, who were supposed to get away with evil in broad daylight, and he does it with the full force of the rival of the Pirate King. It's important that this attack interrupts Blackbeard before he got more established. This is like if Fujitora had showed up to Dressrosa 10 years ago at the start of the massacre. If he saw through everything, saw Sugar and the strings, and went all out to stop it. If Fujitora cut the strings right off Doflamingo's hands and destroyed him, it would have saved so many lives and so many years of suffering. That is what Galaxy Impact is. It's a Marine with real power, stepping up and cutting off the start of the decades of abuse. It's like if post-time skip Smoker and Tashigi had showed up to Alabasta before the Civil War and destroyed Crocodile. The whole war could have been prevented and thousands of lives saved. It's like if post-time skip Kobe had showed up to the East Blue and destroyed Captain Morgan when he first started. Shellstown would never have been terrorized and forced to pay tributes, and Morgan and Helmeppo would have been arrested sooner. Hitting closer to home, it's like if Kobe had dashed in, stopped the bullet that killed Belmare, and then nuked Arlong with Honesty Impact. That is what Galaxy Impact is. That is what the Marines are supposed to do. They're supposed to become strong enough to do something about it. Not Akainu destroying O'Hara. Not Kizaru protecting slavery for the Celestial Dragons. Not Nezumi making deals with Arlong. Not allowing Crocodile, Moria, and Doflamingo to abuse people in broad daylight. Every one of those abused civilians is someone's Belmare. They are the mission to protect. Garp and Kobe understand that. That is Garp and Kobe's type of justice. The fact that this is a hockey feat makes it that much better. Garp didn't use a devil fruit. He didn't use a Saijo Uwazamono weapon. He didn't use super strength from being a Lunarian, a cyborg, a fishman. He didn't use any special advantages. This was 100% hockey. Hockey is the user's willpower and the sum of all their training and everything they fight for. The strength of this attack physically embodies the strength of Garp's character and of his type of justice. As we watch the Galaxy Impact tearing through the Blackbeard pirates, this is true justice tearing through the facade of the balance of power and taking its rightful place. You may say I'm reading into it too much, but I don't think so. Remember everything the Gorosei did and didn't do to manipulate everyone. Remember, Bruce reported over the phone that Kobe had already escaped. Remember the ridiculous amount of overkill that this attack is against fodder opponents. Remember everything Garp did and didn't do for Ace. Remember, Garp won't serve the Celestial Dragons, but he stays as a Marine to change things from within. This is a man of insight and nuance, not a meathead. Garp knows what he's doing. Galaxy Impact is an act of rebellion, as much as Fujitora bowing to Riku was. That's another reason this scene is meaningful. As we near the end of the story, Robin will find the last poneglyph and reveal all the government's dirty secrets. When that day comes and starts a war, we need as many people as possible to turn against the Celestial Dragons. So it's satisfying to see the good Marines having power and standing for true justice. It gives us hope that they will choose the right side in the end. Specifically, imagine if Garp survives this. If he breaks out or someone rescues him, imagine what Garp would do later. We could get Luffy, Dragon, and Garp side by side in the war against Mires. It would be so perfect. The three generations united, leading the three factions. Luffy with an alliance of pirates, Dragon with the Revolutionary Army, and Garp with the Good Marines. To summarize once more, the narrative impact of Galaxy Impact is it cashes in on our emotional investment from the entire series. The hype for Garp is multiplied by all the other story threads which depend on him. He gets revenge for Ace and shatters 1,000 episodes of expectations of Marines being awful. It shows Marines having power and standing for true justice, which gives us hope for the future. That's all for the Galaxy Impact analysis. I don't plan to make a habit of this. I just had a burning desire to talk about this angle because I didn't see anyone else do it. Thanks for watching. Au revoir.